This is Tiffany Sorya. I'm the founder of Novel Education Group, and this is my startup story.
Every wildfire began with a spark. Every superhero has an origin story, and every single startup has a moment that they point to as their beginning, and every founder has a purpose that drove them in the midst of all obstacles. That is the startup story. Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to read an iTunes review from Poster22, who gave the show a 5-star rating and wrote, "This is my new favorite podcast. James does an incredible job interviewing and crafting the stories of entrepreneurs. These stories draw you in and give you great insights on living out your dreams. It is both practical and humbling to hear the good, bad, and ugly situations that real-life entrepreneurs face in getting their businesses off the ground. My favorite part of the show is James's deep belly laugh as the story unfolds. Keep up the good work." This is quite possibly one of the best reviews I've written, so thank you, Poster22, for taking the time to write the review and to acknowledge my full body laugh. What you're hearing is absolute pure joy when I'm talking with these founders. So for all my listeners everywhere, if you have found any value in the startup story, please leave a written review on iTunes and plug your brand, URL, or social media accounts. If you do that, then I will read your review in an upcoming episode, and it becomes a mini ad that lasts for years to come. It is just my way of saying thank you for taking the time to leave a review. The written reviews mean a ton for being discovered within the iTunes platform. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Apple Podcasts has redesigned their navigation, and finding great shows has become a bit more challenging. Also, the new podcast platform really isn't that reliable, so Apple, get on your game and fix that. Climbing the charts on iTunes is not just about listeners, but it's about engagement. Listening is one way iTunes measures engagement, but written reviews have a multiplying effect, so please leave those written reviews. This episode marks our 52nd episode since we launched in January of this year. When the startup story launched, we had no audience, zero. In fact, my launch plans were to simply leverage my LinkedIn network and to promote the podcast to past attendees of the live entrepreneurial events I used to host. But that was it. Yet, even though I did not have any established audience, we were able to put together some incredible episodes with amazing founders like Jason McCann, the founder of Veridesk, and Larry Namer, the founder of E! Entertainment Television. Their support and generosity with their time and transparency helped put the startup story on the map. But if I'm being fully transparent, the episode that catapulted the startup story to a whole new level was episode 12 with Tiffany Sorya, the founder of Novel Education Group. Tiffany's episode hit milestones for the startup story that have yet to be repeated. Her episode hit the top 100 listened to episodes when it first released. Let me clarify. Her episode hit the top 100 of all episodes on iTunes. Her episode increased our listener base by 15,000 listeners. Part of the reason her story reached such heights is because her friends rallied around her to help promote her episode. And one such friend was Kylie Jenner. I'm not gonna lie, I was super skeptical of the influence megastars had, but it was no joke. While all the accolades of her show are impressive, what I love most about those success markers is that it was due to the support of her friends. You often hear me talk about how the entrepreneurial journey is one that should not be done alone, and Tiffany's story is proof of the power of a great support system. So with all that said, depending on how much you love podcasts, there's a very high chance that you have not heard Tiffany's episode because it was episode 12 and we're now episode 52. So for that reason, I want to bring Tiffany's episode off the shelf to ensure her episode makes it to your podcast queue because it's an incredibly powerful story. So with that in mind, I hope you enjoy this episode as it originally aired on March 19th of this year. In 2017 and 2018, I held live events where 80 to 100 people would attend to hear the startup story of a successful founder in the technology space. The focus was on the tech scene or some sort of tech angle because of who our sponsor was at the time. It was during that period that I began to realize how many incredible startup stories were being overlooked because of that narrow focus, staying within the tech space. I wanted to tell these stories, and that is why I launched the Startup Story podcast in January of 2019. This episode marks our 12th episode, and we've explored the startup stories of E! Entertainment Television and Veridesk, social media influencer Doc Gen Fit, and HGTV fixer-upper star Clint Harp. But when I started the startup story, I would have never expected to be interviewing a founder of a homeschool group. But that is also why I started the startup story, because I knew there were amazing founder stories out there that would inspire and encourage all who would listen. And this episode, I'm sure, is going to be one of our most popular. This week's guest is Tiffany Sorya, the founder of Novel Education Group. Tiffany's startup story has so many unconventional layers to it that it truly displays how diverse the entrepreneurial journey can be. It sort of makes sense that her story would be unconventional, since her goal is to meet the educational needs for those whose lives are unconventional. People like children of Fortune 100 executives, where travel is very significant, or recording artists who are on tour with them, or even in some cases, children who have early careers and are in the recording studio or on set frequently.
Being able to bring education into that space and make it relevant was really my big goal.
Okay.
I'm very lucky to have had very well-known clients. So when I first started the business, my first clients were Kendall and Kylie Jenner.
Your very first ones?
When I started the business, yeah.
How does that even happen?
Right. So
let's not just brush over that, because I'm sure I'd get all kinds of hate mail. How did you not ask that question? Well, just know that I do ask that question, and I also explore some of her learnings of working with such high-profile individuals like Kylie Jenner. That said, if you're hoping for an hour-long conversation of what it's like being so close to Kylie and Kendall, then this is not the podcast for you. My conversation with Tiffany is about her startup story. And in this episode, you will gain insight into how cultural heritage can impact our entrepreneurial journey. You will learn how paralyzing fear of the what-ifs can be, and how powerful your story can become once you find yourself free from that fear. You will hear how important it is to be aware of critical gaps in the marketplace, because opportunity lies within those gaps. Make sure you listen to the very end of the episode, because there's a critical learning that Tiffany shares with us from her relationship with Kylie Jenner. I placed it at the very end because while Tiffany's story may include Kylie and Kendall, her story is so much more, and it is one that needs to be heard without the distraction of the Hollywood limelight. Especially because her story begins as far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood as you can possibly imagine.
So my family's from Cambodia. Both my parents were born there, but
Okay.
they actually didn't meet there. They met in Paris. So my parents moved from Cambodia to Paris in like the 70s.
Okay.
They lived there for 10 years and then they came to the States.
Got it.
And my parents are actually, I think of their story, I mean, they're not entrepreneurs, but I mean, in every right, they kind of are, because their story alone, I feel I'm like, I could never do that. They came here with just nothing.
Yeah.
Didn't really speak English.
I mean, coming to the United States as an immigrant, that's a startup story in itself.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Didn't really speak English. My dad was educated, but when my parents met in Paris, it was during the second half of them being there was during the genocide in
Oh,
Cambodia.
wow.
So they actually lost quite a few family members during that. So
Yeah.
my mom dropped out of school to work so my dad could go to school. So then they moved to the States just for more opportunity. I think they had always planned on staying in France, but it just so happened that they ended up moving to the States. I think that they lived in a hotel when they first moved to Oregon.
So was Oregon their first landing spot from Paris?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. I hope. Mom, I hope that's
I'm
right.
always kind of curious.
Yeah.
In my mind, I think if I'm coming to the States, obviously it would depend on which side of the globe I'm coming from, right? Like I think New York and I guess maybe LA is kind of where I think of the landing spots. But Oregon, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was because my dad had a brother in Oregon already.
Oh,
it was
okay.
either Oregon or Washington,
Got
somewhere
it.
in the Northwest. And so then they just did so well for themselves considering the situation.
Yeah.
You know, my mom worked like a night job for a while and then had my brother and then I had a fantastic childhood. I really did. I had a fantastic childhood. My parents, we traveled from a very young age. Like I left the country for the first time when I was like 7 or something. Grew up going to Cambodia every 2 years since I was 12. So very aware of sort of like my roots and my family in Cambodia, and very familiar with the country and the history of the country and all of that. So had a great childhood. Regular suburban kid though, really. I went to public school, had a dog, you know, did the whole thing. I lived a very suburban life and did dumb stuff, whatever, when I was
But being an entrepreneur was not on your radar.
It was not on my radar.
Like when you think back to your, we'll say high school, you think back to your high school years, career day, which booths are you visiting?
I really had no idea. I was very confused. I think I had like a bit of an identity issue growing up because I am a first generation kid.
Okay.
And so I think for a lot of first generation kids, it's difficult because there's like a huge cultural divide between your parents and how they want to raise you, and then the people that are around you. Especially growing up in Beaverton, Oregon, which at the time was not the most diverse place in the world. I really kind of didn't know what I was supposed to want, but I did always have something in me that like wanted more. I always was curious about what else there was outside of Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
I would always like read magazines or books or things like that and sort of just be like, how did that person get there? How did, there was always so many possibilities to me that were really, when I was like talking to my peers, which is perfectly fine, by the way, like, for them, it was just sort of like, okay, this job sounds cool, so I'm going to do this. And there was really no job for me that sounded cool. I really didn't know. But for me, there was just like, there's got to be more. Like, I want something more and I want something bigger.
Were your parents advocates for that thinking? Or was it like the Truman Show where it's like, you don't go over there?
A bit Truman Show-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit Truman Show-ish. And, it's not like they held me back.
Okay.
But I think because of how their life turned out, that reaching for something like that was just inaccessible for them.
Okay.
And so raising my brother and me, it was just sort of like, you could, and it might work out, but why would you do that when it might work out when you could do this and it could work out for sure?
Yeah, like they wanted stability for you.
They just wanted stability. They wanted me to be safe. They wanted me to be happy. For them, they had no stability until they were like in their 30s, like everything was really, really up in the air and like really horrible things happened to them. So I can understand. I mean, when I was younger, I never said any of this. Now that I'm older, I can really understand where they were coming from. So in high school, I wanted to graduate early.
So an overachiever.
Yeah, but
because you wanted to be, you're an overachiever by nature, or because you just wanted out?
I just wanted out.
Got it. Okay.
I just was done with that, and no part of my high school or my life there really intrigued me very much. I was just ready to see what else there was, and I didn't really care about all the things that like a traditional high school would give to you. I was never really interested in that. I just wanted to be done early so I could be out in the world and doing something else.
So did you finish a year earlier or?
Well, actually, I didn't end up finishing.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Sorry. I didn't actually end up finishing early.
Okay.
But I did end up taking some other courses. Like I shortened my senior year course list and took some other courses at the college. And I decided to go to the city college. Everyone was going to like this big state schools in Oregon. And it was just my worst nightmare to think about going to college with the same people I went to high school with. And so I was like, I'm going to go to the state school. So my path first started when I was still kind of confused and going to college. I was like, okay, I guess I'll just be pre-med.
Okay. Actually, before we get to college, you said something interesting. And part of your journey is obviously as a female entrepreneur. And I hate that we have to add female entrepreneur in front of entrepreneur. But when you read statistics that only 7% of startups that get venture-backed funding are female-founded companies. So that we're still in a space where we do have to say female founder, male founder, because there has to be visibility to female founder companies. So going to your high school and your upbringing, your parents wanted stability. Was there a difference in parenting and guidance between you and your brother from your parents? Or so there was. Okay.
Yes.
And I thought there might have been just from a culture perspective, but I just wasn't sure if one leaning was, do what you want. The other was be an attorney, be a doctor. What was that like? What were some of the differences there?
Well, first of all, one similarity was that my brother, they never really pushed both of us to really like reach for the stars.
Okay.
But my brother always had the time, whereas I didn't have the time.
Oh, okay.
That was really the big difference. Was just like, okay, well, you got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because you got to have babies and you need to get married. And then like that's when your life really starts.
Got it.
Where for me, when you get married and when you have babies is when your life really starts. I'm neither married nor do I have kids right now, by the way.
But you have a dog.
But I have a dog. So yes, I do. I do have one kid, which is not anything I ever really believed in.
Okay. Thank you for answering that. I thought there might have been, and I wanted to unpack that a bit because I think whether we acknowledge it now or not, that did have an impact
Definitely.
into your journey.
It continues to impact my journey.
Yeah.
My brother still has more time than me, even in adulthood.
Yeah.
I am limited in ways because I'm a woman.
Yeah. Does that drive you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I mean, I think the plight of being a woman, it's like, I got to be successful, but I can't be I can't be more successful than my husband. I have to be a good mom, but I also have to be like this boss.
Yeah.
I have to be a boss, but I can't be mean.
Yeah.
But then I can't be too nice. It's just like
there's a dance. You're always having to dance.
Always.
Yeah.
And that's just to me the plight of being a woman. It's just trying.
Yeah.
People always wanting to say she's cool, but she's like this.
Yeah.
You know, I don't really feel like men run into those problems.
What I love though, and for all of our listeners, our female listeners that are either entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs or and maybe even business students, we'll say, what I love that your mindset is you've just owned it. You're like, that is not going to be a barrier or a hurdle to me. It's what it is.
Right.
And I'm going to bulldoze my way right through that. And I love that about you.
Thanks.
So let's jump into your college now. So now you don't want to be an entrepreneur yet. You're thinking pre-med is what you were saying.
I was thinking pre-med, or I was thinking something in the medical field. The thing is that despite whatever, I was always really good at school. I was always a bit of a school nerd. And I always loved science. And so when I first went to school, I was like, okay, I guess I'll just do the pre-med thing, whatever. But it wasn't the pre-med thing that really captured my interest.
Yeah.
It was just the science part.
Okay.
So my first year of college, I actually did really, really poorly. And I think it's because I was really lost as an individual. I hadn't found the thing that like sparked anything in me. I just kind of felt like I was going through the motions of life. And because I was just going through the motions, what was the point? I just didn't know the point of reading all these books and doing well. I couldn't see the forest through the trees. I didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. I was just doing it because that's what I was supposed to do. And then when I dropped the med school pressure and suddenly the end wasn't as important as just what I'm doing right now, something just clicked and suddenly I just started doing really, really well in school.
That's awesome. It's that love of learning became real again, right? Yeah,
exactly. And suddenly then I felt that again of just sort of like the world is at my fingertips. I started feeling, I started feeling that again, like what I felt in high school, because I didn't feel that my first year of college. I just I felt really just like, what am I supposed to do? I'm so limited. I actually felt really limited. And then when I just let go of the pressure, then everything suddenly felt like I could do anything I wanted. And I could be in school still. I didn't have to drop out of school. I could stay in. And in fact, being in school gave me more opportunity because I was learning more about all the things that were available to me and I could travel.
That's awesome.
So then I graduated school and was at that point extremely ready to get out of Portland.
In Oregon?
In Oregon.
Like U of O or?
Portland State University.
State, got it, okay.
And I was really ready at that point to get out. So that's when I moved to Los Angeles.
Okay. Let's timestamp that. What year are we talking that you moved to LA?
2010.
2010. So you graduated in 2010 with what degree?
I graduated with a degree in biology.
In biology.
And a minor in French.
But you are incredibly smart. So you leave Portland, 2010, biology, a science, and a language. What were you thinking? I mean, still right now, you're not thinking entrepreneurship.
I'm still thinking
what were you thinking from a career perspective? Now you're coming to LA. What were your intentions?
At this point, I was feeling incredibly free-spirited. So
and this was not the 70s, by the way.
So I came down with not much of a plan.
Okay.
Not much of a plan. But I knew in the back of my mind, I just wanted to get out and go somewhere where I was going to be exposed to so many new things. And I just kept my mind really open. And I said, okay, I'm going to move to LA. I'll just sort of see what happens the next few months and I'll go back to school. Because really at this point, I had sort of fallen in love with school. And I saw myself maybe teaching at a college level or or doing research, something like that.
Yeah. So you're really in love with school and learning. I mean,
Definitely.
the fact you're thinking about that from a career perspective, like you're really in love with it.
I'm really in love with it because when I started doing well in college too, that's when like the roots of my tutoring began because I would help all of my friends with school and I would lead study group. And suddenly that was like my power. Like knowledge was my power because I grew up looking at all the pretty girls in school or looking at all the popular girls in school and not really knowing like where I fit in. And so when I suddenly became this really awesome student in college, like suddenly that was my edge. Like that's what defined me. So I went with that and I was like, okay, I'll move down to LA, you know, and live life for a little bit and just meet new people, see what experiences are there for me. And then I'll go back to school. But what happened was in that time, I started tutoring as a job.
Okay.
You know, I've never been a bartender, waitress type of person. I had one waitressing job in college. I was terrible at it. and I was like, oh, I can tutor. Like, I know how to do all this stuff, you know, and I really enjoyed doing it before. I started tutoring and I was working for an agent and I got hired through an agency.
For tutoring? For tutoring.
Okay. And before I knew it, I had like a full caseload.
Oh, wow.
Within a few months, I had homeschool kids, I had after school tutoring, and I never even saw myself as an educator when I was younger, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But I always loved school, so it made sense for me. Yeah. And I really enjoyed tutoring. I just really thought it was cool to see someone struggle or to see someone hate school and then come in with like this fresh, new, young perspective. Yeah. Because I was always like, and I still am a young spirited person as well. And I just kind of felt well-rounded. I mean, I loved school, but I also like other things too. It wasn't, you know, just like living in a box. And so when I started to like click with the youth, that's when I started thinking entrepreneurship.
Interesting. Yeah. So what was it in that period where, one, you found a passion, right? Mm-hmm. Now it's like, okay, helping. One, I think there's service. There's a passion in that, right? Yeah. It's service. It's helping someone kind of get over that hump that is holding them back in some way, helping them with the love of learning. But how do you get to entrepreneurship in that?
So there's a couple of things that happened. So I was working full-time for the agency, and then I also got hired through an actual school.
Okay.
For homeschooling. A school that exclusively did homeschooling programs.
Okay.
I was working for both, and the school was actually based in Atlanta, but they had an LA branch out here. And so I was sort of the head of the LA branch.
Okay.
I just saw, because I was the one that was working one-on-one with all these kids. I was the one that was like picking out these teachers to match with the families.
Okay.
So I kind of just really started to notice what worked and what didn't. And I saw a void.
That's where the entrepreneurial journey begins right there.
And I remember when I was just tutoring too, I was talking to my parents and talking to my friends. I was like, I feel like I could do this on my own.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could do it better than the agency's doing it. I feel like I could do it better than this school is doing it. Like, I know what these kids want. I know what type of schooling they're looking for. I feel like it all comes from something. Like, I could do something that no one else is doing right now.
So how old were you in that moment right
23.
There? Okay, so for all those listening, think about the ingredients that Tiffany just put out there real quick. She saw a gap. She knew herself to know that she could do something better. And she began processing through what that looked like to actually do it herself.
Yes.
And I think what a lot of people get hung up on is they can see a gap, but then they start thinking to themselves all the things as to why they can't be the ones to solve that. So my question to you is, you did not grow up in an entrepreneurial environment. It doesn't sound like you had a lot of mentorship under entrepreneurship. So why did you think you could do it? And how did you overcome? I assume you probably had some self-doubt in your head. You're thinking, okay, do I really want to do this on my own? You know, is this contrary to how I was raised with stability? Because entrepreneurship is anything but stable, both emotionally, financially, any way you want to slice it. How did you get over that mental narrative to actually say, I'm doing it and move forward on it?
The support of some friends, definitely. And just the idea that if I didn't, I already knew what was going to happen if I didn't do it. But I didn't know the possibilities unless I tried it.
Oh my God, I love that.
I already knew what my life was going to look like if I didn't try. Not that it was bad.
Yes.
I loved teaching, and the agency's great, the school was great. But who knows what could happen?
Yes.
If I tried, and if it didn't work out, it's okay.
Yes.
I could always go back. It's okay if it doesn't work out. I really felt like that was the big thing.
Yes.
And I kind of feel like a lot of people don't know how easy it is to actually incorporate a business. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's like the click of a button.
Yes, it is. It really is.
Literally anything that you want. If I want to start like a sweater company or something, it's just the click of a button to incorporate the name of something and to purchase a domain.
Yes.
Online. It's very simple. And and including me, didn't understand how simple it was to really have a website and have an incorporated name. And then after you have that, then it's really yours. Those things are yours and you can do what you want with it.
I hope you're enjoying this incredible episode. For the past few weeks, you have heard me mention that we're building a Startup Story YouTube channel. Well, I'm excited to announce that channel is now live. On this channel, we will be synthesizing each episode down to its top key learnings, as well as sharing some thought leadership from the hundreds of hours I've spent with some incredibly successful founders. I hope you'll check it out and, of course, subscribe. Just visit youtube.com/James McKinney. We will include a link in our show notes in case you can't remember that it's youtube.com/James McKinney. All right, let's get back to this week's startup story.
You said something there. I mean, I felt like you were just taking myself and listeners to church there. And I want to make sure we cover that again, is that you knew what your life looked like if you didn't make the decision, but you didn't know what would be on the other side of that. And you wanted to explore that. You wanted to see that. I love that because there are so many opportunities people miss out on and you weren't having it. You're like, no, I don't know what's over there, but I want to explore. I want to see what's over there. I love that.
Yeah, I want to see what's over there. I want to see all the possibilities there are to me. I didn't want to put a cap on anything, stable or not.
Yeah.
And that's really what pushed me to do it.
I love it.
I just want to see what happens.
Yeah.
I just click the button.
I'm the first member of Church of Tiffany. I love this. I love it. So keep preaching. So you now know that you want to move forward in this, and you had friends that supported you, and having that support system, those encouraging, that encouragement army behind you obviously helps.
Yeah.
But so what is that journey now? Now you're moving forward on this. What do those steps look like?
So then I incorporated Novel Education Group, which is the company that I have now, and started my own private homeschooling and tutoring agency. So what I did was, I will say it requires research.
Yes.
That's something that I must say that other than clicking the button, that you have to do. And so I took the bits and pieces that I loved from all my experiences and from the little jobs I had here and there, and sort of molded my own company and my own philosophy and the way that I would have liked to be taught and the way that I see kids now want to be taught. I mean, education is in a much different space than it was even when I was in school, especially in Los Angeles as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where we have younger and younger people really looking to entrepreneurship and younger people making money.
Yeah.
And so being able to bring education into that space and make it relevant was really my big goal.
Okay.
I'm very lucky to have had very well-known clients. So when I first started the business, my first clients were Kendall and Kylie Jenner.
Your very first ones?
When I started the business, yeah.
How does that even happen?
Right. So
let's not just brush over that, because I'm sure I'd get all kinds of hate mail. How did you not ask that question?
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
I actually was working with them previously through one of the other companies.
As a tutor?
As a tutor.
Got it. Okay.
And then I started my own business.
Okay.
And let them know what I was doing. And it really resonated with them.
Yeah.
It resonated with Kris Jenner. And they've also always been very supportive of women entrepreneurship, obviously.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so when they knew that I was starting this, they trusted me with a lot of stuff, and they believed in me, and they believed in what I was doing. And they said, we want to go with you.
That's awesome.
And so that was really the start of everything, and what really helped me launch this whole platform of just, this is the way that I want to do school.
Yeah.
This is how we make it relevant. And this is how we fit it into lives of people who live this type of lifestyle.
So what years was this when Kylie and Kendall were your first clients under Novel Education Group?
It was 5 years ago, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. Because obviously now they're both graduated and doing well for themselves. Yeah.
I think they're doing all right.
I mean, okay.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, Novel Education Group starts. Your first 2 clients happened to be big names, but were they your only clients? Was the business model one-to-one and you stayed with them through the course of education?
Yeah. Okay. Give or take. The homeschooling was one-to-one.
Got it.
But through just sort of like the network of tutoring and things like that, I started just to get a lot of calls from my friend said that you tutored her daughter. We were wondering if you had anyone for my son who's struggling in chemistry.
Okay.
And also, when you're in any industry for a while, you kind of get to know other people that do the same thing. And so I'd be like, oh yeah, my friend Harry over here is really great at chemistry. So let me send him over.
Okay.
So I actually started doing that before I incorporated the business. I would just sort of be like, oh, okay, I'll send my friend here and I'll send my friend there.
Yeah.
But then I started getting more calls.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wait a minute, I know I can turn this into something. And then when things started rolling, where we really started to shine was in the homeschooling and being able to provide a service that I really didn't feel like existed at the time, and a service that a lot of parents really took to, and so did the students. I always feel like the goal when you start a business, obviously you want to be successful and you want your business to be lucrative, and you set those goals for yourself. But what's equally important is actually working on your service and your product and making that the most important. Because if you continue to really fine tune the service, then people will come to you. Because what are people ultimately looking for? They're looking for a good product and they're looking for a good service. Yep. So if you don't have those things and you start a business, even if it's fleeting in the beginning and you do find success in the beginning, it will very quickly dwindle.
What obstacles did you run into? Because you were 100% right on the product and service, but part of the growth of a company is that learning, right? It's you hit a wall, whether it be financial wall, whether it be in the case of restaurants, bad reviews or whatever, you hit something that just impacts your growth. It causes you to second guess some of your steps. What were some of those early steps or missteps for you? Because your only clients weren't Kylie and Kendall, because you had a lot of the other tutor placements and referrals as well.
Yes. So I did have a couple other families here and there, but in terms of homeschooling, it was just the one. The obstacles were getting more clients, the space that I really wanted this to work in, which was in sort of the entertainment industry space, and the space of people who live unconventional lifestyles, right? Where a traditional schooling experience doesn't really fit in with how they live their lives. It was the awareness, really. Getting the message out there was definitely an obstacle. Branding was an obstacle as well.
What was the challenge and what did you learn through that?
Right.
And now I'm thinking about it, like your contracts, if you will, do have a termination date and it's graduation, right? I mean, so at some point, this client, I am no longer servicing after X date.
Right.
So there is only a finite time of service. Yeah. So you're right. You had to find more clients. What was that obstacle to awareness, especially in the entertainment industry? There's so much noise out there. And how did you overcome it?
Trying to find a way to spread the word, I think, was one of the biggest obstacles I had and continue to have. Really, especially with a business like mine, which is a bit unconventional what I do.
You are the only homeschool founder I can imagine interviewing. This is hilarious to me. So you're right. It is unconventional.
And a lot of people didn't know that still don't know that it exists, and that a service like ours does exist. Yeah. So really finding a way to reach out to the right people and just hitting the ground running with that. Putting together something really presentable and reaching out to as many people as possible in terms of, this is what I do, this is who I am, and you just keep going. Yeah. You got to just keep going, and you learn that if you cast a wide net, then you're going to catch fish.
But how do you do that with your clients? If I misunderstood, please correct me. In your pursuit of those with unconventional lives, entertainment industry, we'll say, I'm assuming that is heavily dependent on word of mouth.
Yes. It is.
If I'm a celebrity, I'm not going to let just anyone school my kids. It's going to be a recommendation from another celebrity who's had their kids schooled.
So you know how you said that everything is sort of finite with what we do? And it is. You're absolutely right. However, it's almost like that's a detriment to my business, but it's also not. Because if I wasn't good at what I did, then they would continue to need me forever.
That is true.
The point of what I do is that they continue to be successful adults after our job is done, because we're trying to make education not just like, hey, geometry and physics and World War II. We're trying to teach these people a set of skills that they will carry with them into adulthood. So even though, you got a 15-year-old singer who's just signed like a major recording contract or something, he's still going to need to know how to write and read well. Yep. He's still going to need to know how to communicate effectively. And those are the things that we're going to try and teach them. And when your time ends with them and they move on to be successful, then that's sort of like the best advertising that you can have.
Oh, awesome.
So that's really how it's worked out for me, is that the kids have always done well.
Yeah. So for those, now I'm curious. I mean, right now, the construct of the business, is it just you that are the full-time teachers?
No, I have a team of teachers now. Yeah.
So people can contact you for homeschooling their kids in the industry. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah, we provide all of that. It's a full service that we provide.
So now you've been doing this for 5 years. If you were to look back, what would you do differently after you left the agency in growing this business?
I think I would have spent more time on branding.
How so?
I think I would have spent more time on how people viewed my service and how people viewed me, and being more informative on all the things that we were capable of doing. I think that's really important. Yeah. I think I would have planned further in advance in terms of how to deal with capacity.
Okay. What would you have done though?
Well, I would just set, one mistake I definitely made, which has helped me, but looking back, what I would have done differently. I learned schedule management, taxes, like all that stuff. I learned it as I went, which was extremely stressful.
Absolutely.
It was really, really stressful. So I think I would have spent more time on like the logistics of it all.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And like setting it up, not just dealing with things as they come, but trying to prepare for them a little bit more.
Yeah.
Curating the service, obviously really important, but also finding a way to prepare for what's ahead, and also really projecting where you see the business in like 5 years.
Yeah.
That's not something I asked myself when I started the business, because I kind of did it on a whim, right?
Yeah.
But I would have asked myself, okay, like where do you see yourself in 5 years? And how do you get there? And then what do you do to prepare for when you do get there in 5 years? Because sometimes it's 5 years later and you look up and you're like, oh, I didn't really plan for any of this.
And that is so common to the entrepreneurial journey. People jump in, they see a gap, they see a way they can solve it, and they just go into action mode and forget sometimes about the planning, the forward thinking. So let me ask this question though, because as a solopreneur, when you started, did you, and especially because you came out of the gate with clients, so you didn't have the financial stress, and I don't say that just because of who your clients were, just because you had clients, you didn't have the financial worries of, I got to get an invoice, I got to get a sale. Did you find yourself becoming comfortable and that impacting your growth as well?
Well, in all honesty, I did have the financial stress.
Okay.
Because my clients were finite, right? Like they were graduating in a couple of years. But, I thought to myself, I was like, okay, I got 9 months, right? A school year to teach them, do my job with them.
Yep.
But I also have 9 months to like grow this business and get more clients for next year. So I was thinking like a year ahead for every single year, just sort of, okay, how can I get clients here? How can I get clients here? And that's really what I'm constantly, even now.
See, that's interesting. I didn't take into effect your business being, we'll say September to June or whatever. And therefore your income, your revenue stream, September to June or whatever. So, okay, now I understand. So,
yeah,
got it.
I mean, a lot of our kids go to school year round because of just sort of
their lives,
like the situation that they're in. You know, they're like, they don't take like summer breaks or anything like that. And a lot of them are trying to graduate early. So that's a little bit different. But yeah, I was always thinking about the next year. And here's the thing too. I feel like a lot of people shy away from entrepreneurship because of the instability and because of the stress and because of the worry of just like, what if I'm sitting in my office and the phone doesn't ring all day long?
The what ifs are a 1,000-pound burden for people.
They really are. They really are. But just moving forward, continuing, and I feel like this is where the whole curate your service thing comes in. If you just put the work in and believe in your product and continue just to move forward, the phone will ring.
Yeah.
Like people will call. And if you provide something good for them, then they'll refer you to a friend.
Yeah.
It'll just like, that's how it organically happens.
For those that are considering homeschool, we homeschool our kids. What sets you apart from the numerous options that are out there for those that are listening?
It's definitely the tailored aspect of what we do, and it's the all-inclusive service. We're able to provide everything, and we're talking teachers, supplies, full-time curriculum. We can go wherever you need us to go in the world. And coming from a philosophy of teaching people how to learn, I think that's really been sort of the foundation of Novel Education Group. Teaching people how to find the answer to things that they don't have the answers to. Teaching students how to read something and look at it critically. Teaching people how to find information on the internet and then understanding whether or not that information is, reliable.
Wait, it's not always true on the internet? What are you talking about?
Really teaching them because you'll be surprised. A lot of them, this newer generation that's coming up is obviously heavily influenced by the internet.
Yes.
And this, libraries aren't really a thing. And I remember having to go to libraries and looking up information for my papers. And you could always rely on a book because people read them and published them. And on the internet, you don't get published on the internet. You just kind of can put information on the internet. So teaching students, I'm sorry, they're not all kids.
If your students are listening, they're like, it's about time you corrected that.
Yeah, exactly right. That's how to approach a problem and solve it, I think really has been, and going through the curriculum with those philosophies in mind. Yeah. So really teaching skills through the curriculum. I think that's what really sets us apart.
That's awesome.
It's not a plug and chug type of situation. And that's really what I wanted to veer away from. And that's what I was feeling when I was just tutoring. And that's why I wanted to break out of it. I don't want it to feel plug and chug. I don't want my students to ever feel like they're doing busy work. Yeah. And I want to be able to provide the type of service that feels really impactful.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are you fulfilled with what you're doing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I couldn't be happier that I decided to do this.
Yeah. Because it's easy sailing, right? There's no challenges at all, right?
Yeah, right. That's right. It's been so easy. And I look back actually on how confused I was as a college student and a high school student. Yeah. And I really feel like I have found this great little niche for myself.
That's awesome.
Where I feel fulfilled emotionally and also professionally. Yeah. And it another great thing about being an entrepreneur is that you don't ever run out of work. Like there's just always something to do, and there's there's just new projects to take on, and truly the possibilities are endless. Yeah. Truly. And you only really get that with entrepreneurship. Yeah. And that's just like the beauty of the whole thing.
That's the beauty of the journey is you can keep extending the journey. You can add a new path. I absolutely love it. Since you've learned that, 5 years ago, you wish you would have kind of done some forward thinking and where do you want to be in 5 years? What is the future of Novel Education Group?
I see, Novel Education is something that I just want to continue to grow. I see a larger team of teachers. I see us working with more international families.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I really see us being the go-to for the entertainment industry in terms of how a younger, like a teenager, can go to school and pursue a career at the same time.
Okay.
That's really where I see it being the go-to for management companies and agencies and things like that. They're just like, okay, cool. We got this 15-year-old that really loves to sing, or we got this 15-year-old that really loves to act. But education is also really important. I don't ever believe that you have to choose between having a career and being educated as a young person.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really important that it stays prevalent, and it's important that it stays relevant. As you know, I want kids that are following all of these like stars on Instagram and things like that. I want them to also know where they're going to school. Yeah. I want that to be a part of their message as well.
I love that. In fact, that falls in line with your brand. I think I saw somewhere, I think it's a tagline in your company, making learning stylish.
Yeah, making smart stylish
making
again.
Smart stylish.
You know?
I love that.
Like we live in this time of trends and things like that. And I feel like education has just been sort of like washed out as of recent years because of this huge boom of influencers and young careers. Suddenly school has just sort of been on the back burner and I want it to be not that. I want the kids that are these fans to also know that school is great and being educated is cool and being smart is cool.
That's
mean,
awesome.
It's a cool thing to be smart. It's a cool thing to be aware, and it's a cool thing to be able to speak effectively. And really, just no matter what career you get into, you will be a better songwriter if you're educated.
Oh,
you will
absolutely.
be a better actor if you're educated.
Yes.
And you will be a better, more impactful influencer if you're educated.
Yes.
Your opinions will have validity. It resonates with everyone.
You'll be a better human being.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, I love that. So one of the questions I always ask founders, because I believe so much that if we forget the shoulders that we stood upon to get to where we are today, and we lose that sense of gratitude, it will inevitably lead to our failure. Mm-hmm. So when you look back at your journey, and you're still in the journey, who do you look back to and point with just an immense amount of gratitude?
Even though my parents didn't say, reach for the stars, them. If anything, they just made me feel safe enough to do this. Another one is my aunt who passed away a few years ago. You know, and I look to her for a lot of advice because she was also first generation. Okay. And so she also struggled with like the same things that I was struggling with, of just sort of like, my parents want this, but then these people want this. And then my parents want me to do this, but I want to do this. Like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. So she really helped me make everything more focused. Okay. How do I focus all of these ideas into one thing that I can execute? And really, honestly, Kendall and Kylie. Yeah. For believing in me, for continuing to support me. A lot of my LA friends, just for saying, this is cool. You can totally do this. Like, you can do this. You know, I'll be like, yeah, you're right. I can do this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to see what happens.
Part of the reason I asked that question, one, because I truly do believe that if we forget all the people that poured into us and encouraged us to take the steps we need to take to get to where we are today, we'll begin to think we can do it on our own. And it's in that solo flight that we will fail. So I truly do believe that. But one of the other reasons for the listeners to understand just the incredible power of support and encouragement of others. Even if you're a reluctant entrepreneur yourself, absolutely, and you have those people in their life that are wanting to do something different, even if it's someone who's so incredibly overweight, but they have made the statement that I want to lose 200 pounds, like that encouragement and that support matters in the long term.
It really also... My publicist.
She's in the room. There's an awkward silence here.
No, but she really made me believe it. She was like, you're doing something really great. And when you have people tell you that, you know, I always feel like, and I feel this way with students too, I always feel like you want to live up to the expectations that people put on you. So when someone believes in you and believes that you're great, you want to be great. Yeah. And then you work hard at being great.
I love it. Words are so powerful. And I just want people to understand. And I love that there's, and in fact, I think you spoke recently at like a women's luncheon event for entrepreneurial women. There's just so much power in the assembly of like-minded people.
Yes.
And so I love that you're pouring back into the entrepreneurial community by joining us as well.
Yes.
And so thank you for your time in doing this with us, because I think your journey brings so much encouragement to those listening. It's so insightful. And again, I would have never guessed when I started the startup story that I would have ever had a founder of a homeschool network. This is crazy to me. It's amazing to me how diverse the entrepreneurial journey is.
Right.
So for all those listening that have a notebook full of dreams, or whatever the case may be, or you're a frustrated entrepreneur or a defeated entrepreneur, there are so many ways to keep pursuing. And so I guess I want to ask you, as we wrap our time up together, I do say our listeners are the reluctant entrepreneurs, got a 9-to-5, maybe a mortgage, and they're married with kids, and there's some reason they're hesitant to move forward on their dreams. Or maybe it's age. Maybe they're in their late 50s and they think it's too old to do something like that. Mm-hmm. Or the defeated entrepreneur who's tried it over and over again and failed every single time. Or the one who is an entrepreneur right now and has a business, but is just frustrated by the lack of growth. In fact, I'm sure as I'm describing these, you're resonating with at least one of those three as we're talking about it. So what do you say to one of those people right now?
It is never linear. This path is not linear at all. Don't ever believe for a second that the successful person that's sitting next to you in a restaurant, or the person that you read about in a magazine, that they just tried something and then it just worked, and then that was it for them, because that's so not the case. 2, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're 70 and you want to start a business, you can do it.
Love it.
You can do it. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just an idea until you put it down on paper, or until you do something with it. Yeah. And everything starts as an idea. So just to try, that's really just my advice, is just try. Just give it a try. That's it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes, is just one try. And then suddenly that try turns into another try. And then that try turns into another try. And it'll work. Something will work for you. Even if just your current product or idea or something isn't taking off the way that you wanted, try a different one. Yeah. Try a facet of that product. Yeah. Try a facet of that service. You know what I mean? Yep. There's not only one thing that people do. Yeah. There's several things.
I love it. Took me to church again. That was so good. I hope all the listeners, I know all the listeners got so much value from our conversation. Thank you so very much, Tiffany.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
After my time with Tiffany, my eyes are wide open to how many different paths to entrepreneurship there are, and I hope yours are as well. I believe that all too often we have a very narrow perspective about what an entrepreneur is, or what type of venture is worthy of pursuing. And that narrow definition is also adopted by those around us that do not even have entrepreneurial longings. What has been your challenge on moving forward on your idea or passion? Is it that you have convinced yourself that there's no need for it, or that it doesn't have a place in the market? That might very well be true, but have you validated it yet? See, it's so common for us to allow our internal narrative to dictate our path forward. So many times we've allowed a false idea to take residence in our mind and limit our future potential. If you have some belief in your mind as to why your business is failing, or why you should not even start a business, do the research and analysis. Do not simply let an unfounded idea stay within your mindset and control your future direction and potential. Tiffany shared with us that for her, she was simply too curious about what could happen if she ventured on her own. So she did the research and moved on her dream. Do not sit still. Keep moving forward. The entrepreneurial journey is not linear, and there is definitely no one-size-fits-all form to entrepreneurship. Do not opt out of pursuing your own venture because of something you are unsure of. Do the research and make a decision on truth. Now, while Tiffany's startup is very different than most, her challenges remain the same: exposure and brand awareness. Please support a fellow entrepreneur by following her on Instagram at Tiffany Sorya. That's TiffanySorya. We'll have a link to her Instagram in our show notes, so make sure you check that out as well. And you can also visit her website at noveleducationgroup.com. Entrepreneurs support entrepreneurs. And in all the digital noise that surrounds us, it is so very challenging to get our message out there. Yes, this is even true for those closely tied to Kylie and Kendall Jenner. So let's support our featured guest today, and let's give Tiffany some love out there. Now, for my personal ask. The Startup Story community has been so incredible about sharing our podcast with others, but we have more stories to tell and more people to reach. We too are a startup, and word of mouth is everything. So please follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Startup Story, or on Twitter at StartupStory_. If you're on LinkedIn, please search for The Startup Story and follow our company page. LinkedIn is a really powerful way to raise awareness of the show. But the most impactful way you can help us grow our audience is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Or if you listen to the show via Spotify, then please simply share the podcast directly from your Spotify app or wherever you listen to the show. These simple actions can make a huge impact in getting these amazing founder stories out to the masses. And please make sure to tag or mention The Startup Story when you do share so that we can connect with you and say thank you directly. I'm so incredibly appreciative of the fact that you listen to this show each and every week. And I look forward to sharing these amazing stories with you every Tuesday with hopes of encouraging and inspiring you to start your story. If you like this podcast and are thinking of creating your own, consider talking to my producer, Danny Osment. He helps thought leaders, influencers, executives, and authors create, launch, and produce podcasts that grow their business and make a real impact in this world. You can contact him today at emeraldcitypro.com/startup story.
So I know I'm going to have people that are listening wondering, how did James not ask anything about being what it was like to be around Kylie and Kendall? And so being that this is a Startup Story podcast isn't incredibly fitting, but I know people are dying for that type of question. So my question to you is, what did you learn from your time with Kylie and Kendall as you were their mentor?
So I remember when I first posted on my Instagram who I was, what I did, what I stood for, and what my business was. This is at a time when Kylie had just launched her app. This is a long time ago. And she had a section of her website and app called Fresh Blood. And it featured people who were making moves in their specific industry. And so she said, okay, this is great. I want to highlight you and like what you're doing with education and what you're doing with school. And I was like, oh, awesome. Great. Thank you so much. We did a little shoot, a little Q&A. And then it went live on the app, and then I posted it on my Instagram. And it was the first time that I had posted sort of anything that really correlated my career with myself.
Got it. Okay.
And I posted it, and I was really excited, and I posted it, and I was like, yeah. And I remember writing in the caption, who am I? Like, I'm Tiffany Sorya, and I'm the founder of Novel Education Group. I was, Kendall and Kylie's homeschool teacher. And I got some hate. I got some negative comments.
Oh my goodness.
I got some mean comments. And I was like, that's mean and that's sad. And I'm sad. And then I remember just thinking like, oh, like I can't post stuff because I'm a teacher and I need to, and I have to be sensible all the time. I'm an educator, so I have to be serious all the time, and I can't post about like this new lipstick that I love or this new movie that's really cool or something like that. And so I remember talking to Kylie about it, because when I said to her, I'm like, God, people are really mean sometimes on social media, like really saying mean comments. And at first she was like, welcome to the club. And then number two, I was like, I don't know. I was like, maybe, because I'm a teacher, I should be careful about what I post and be a little bit more, sensible, just sort of to the people that follow me. And I looked at her and she looks at me and she goes, who cares? And she's like, you can be whatever you want to be. And just because you look the way you look and you like the things that you like does not make you not smart. She's like, so you can be whatever you want and people will love it. Even if you were to stay sensible and if you were to stay inside the box of being a teacher, you would still get hate for that somehow. So she really taught me to just be whoever I wanted to be, and that was fine.
I love that.
And I was going to find success despite all the things I wasn't and all the things that I was.